Hello everyone, and welcome to my final Star Wars book review of 2018, and let's close out with a bang by continuing with my reviews of the New Jedi Order series. Now, the New Jedi Order chronicles the Republic's struggles against the Yuuzhan Vong invasion, one of the most epic and grand stories in all of Star Wars fiction, and where we last left off, things, initially the war was going very poorly. Chewbacca had died, Corran Horn was ousted out after a victory that didn't go as planned, so it didn't feel like much of a victory. But then towards the end, where we last left off, things were starting to pick up. Mara Jade was cured of her disease and was able to successfully give birth to her and Luke's son, Ben Skywalker. So some good things are happening for the New Republic at this point. All right, maybe things are turning around. Maybe the war is turning around and it's going to be all peaches and cream moving forward. Not the case. We pick right up with Star by Star, which is by far the longest of the New Jedi Order series books. Of course, this copy also includes a short story called Recovery, which chronicles Leia's recovery from an earlier battle. Not important to read, but it is a fun read for what it is, and it comes with this copy of Star by Star, so if you want to read it, go right ahead. But Star by Star, which is very weird. Star Wars Star by Star. That's a very redundant title. But anyway, Star by Star is basically the Empire Strikes Back of the New Jedi Order series, where everything goes wrong. It's just horrible, dark failure for the good guys. And it shifts the focus of the series in a new direction where they're going to have to recover from all these losses that they felt, both politically and geographically and personally. All kinds of losses are happening in this book. And because of that, it's one of the best books in the series. Probably the best one since Vector Prime, the original book that started the whole series. And basically what happens, and I'm going to go into spoiler territory here, but I typically try to avoid spoilers, but to really highlight why I enjoy this book so much and why it's so good, I feel like I kind of need to lean into the turn and just go ahead and give away spoilers. So the Solo children end up heading a mission to the planet Merkur to try and stop the Yuuzhan Vong, who've invented a new weapon to deal with the Jedi Knights, which are the Voxen, which are violent creatures that they clone that hunt down the Jedi by detecting the Force and are able to hunt down Jedi through their use of the Force. Realizing that the Jedi are the greatest weapon that the New Republic has, the Yuuzhan Vong are trying to eliminate them and see them as the greatest threat. So the Solo children lead this mission, the Solo children being Jaina, Jason, the twins, and their younger brother Anakin. And they lead this mission to destroy the Voxen supplies and just eliminate that advantage that the Yuuzhan Vong would have. The mission goes very poorly. It ends up with Jason being captured, Jaina running with her tail between her legs and just trying to get as many survivors out of there. And most tragically of all, Anakin Solo, in one of the most shocking turns of the entire series, Anakin Solo is killed, heroically saving his friends and his crew, but is ultimately killed in the effort. So it's amazing that the youngest of the Solo children is actually killed in one of these books. And it's even more tragic because earlier in the series, he had felt guilt over Chewbacca's death and having caused Chewbacca's death, and spent a good portion of the series trying to redeem himself. And you could argue that his heroic self-sacrifice kind of redeemed himself, kind of died in the same way that Chewbacca would have died. Or did die. And, he redeemed himself by sacrificing himself as well. It's like, oh man, that's really sucks. And now Han and Leia, it's all right, they lose Chewie and now they lose one of their kids. That's awful. That's friggin' awful. It's so depressing, but it makes the story better. So, one of the most tragic moments to happen in all of Star Wars fiction, I would say. Maybe not as tragic as losing Chewbacca in Vector Prime, but certainly a shocking turn of events, to say the least. And in one of the greatest defeats for the New Republic, the Yuuzhan Vong leads a full-scale assault on Coruscant and ultimately succeeds in driving the Republic out of there, terraforming the planet and claiming it as their own capital. So Coruscant has fallen, the Yuuzhan Vong have conquered it. The efforts of Luke Skywalker, Mara Jade, Wedge Antilles, and everyone else, unable to push back the forces of the Yuuzhan Vong, and they successfully capture and conquer Coruscant. So, again, huge like Empire Strikes Back vibes here, where everything just goes wrong, everything is horrible, and the New Republic are once again on their back heels trying to push back this seemingly invincible force. So, yeah, I mean, you kind of, in long-running epics like this, you kind of need that point where everything goes wrong, just so the heroes have something to fight back against and come back even stronger. Again, it's the old Empire Strikes Back idea. And I think Star by Star does that successfully and is a huge entry in the new Jedi Order series, and probably I'm thinking like Vector Prime is probably still my favorite of the series, but I'd say Star by Star is a very close second, and I highly recommend checking out Star by Star. The thing about the new Jedi Order series is that the way it's structured, where it jumps around to individual stories featuring on individual characters, you don't necessarily need to read every single book to get the full gist of it. You know, you probably don't need to read. Star by Star is one of the ones I highly recommend. I think that's one of the best entries in the series, at least of what I've read so far. I haven't finished reading all the new Jedi Order books, but I think Star by Star is one of my personal favorites. And again, and hey, it's got this cool cover. Like, this is what the Yuuzhan Vong look like. It's like, man, they're nasty looking, aren't they? Nice design, but this entry was written by Troy Denning, and that's another thing I liked about the new Jedi Order series, is that various authors got to take a stab at writing individual stories for this new saga for Star Wars. So it's not all one voice, it's all a bunch of different authors trying to create their own different stories in this new war, and I think it works very well for the most part. But moving right along from there, with the death of Anakin and the fall of Coruscant, everything's in the shitter right now. And Jaina is especially feeling the pain. So it's very appropriate that we get an entry. It's coming right off the heels of Star by Star. I think it's very appropriate that we get a story focused on Jaina Solo, because she lost her twin. He's captured. They don't know what's happened to him. And Anakin, her younger brother, is dead. So she is feeling some horrible, horrible things right now. And I think it was very good that we got this book centered on her. The title of the book is Dark Journey, written by Elaine Cunningham. And basically it's about Jaina coming to terms with what happened. Because right now it's like what she's feeling initially is anger and hatred, which are dark side feelings. And they're teasing that maybe she's going to turn to the dark side and give in to her darker tendencies to strike back against the Yuuzhan Vong towards what they did to her family and what they did to her brothers. Ultimately, she's able to resist that and stay on the light side and stay on the side of good. She gets paired up with Kip Duran as they get involved in this whole political scenario in this alien world about Jaina possibly being coerced into overthrowing the Queen Mother of this planet and giving into her darker tendencies, to whether or not she does that. That's not necessarily the important, I hate to say that the story or the plot isn't the most important thing. It's more the character work that's really good with Jaina Solo, who's getting advice from Kip Duran, of all people. Kip Duran, who quite the little sociopath, as we saw back in the Jedi Academy trilogy. But she ultimately learns and learns how to control herself and push her own character in the right direction, staying away from the more vengeful, darker tendencies. But again, I think it's very appropriate that we got that book, especially given how Star by Star played out and how she was probably the most impacted person of all, because she was the only one of the 3 Solo children that made it out of that situation alive, as far as we know. Jason taken captive and her younger brother killed. And we actually get Anakin's funeral during this book as well, which is a bit of it kind of tugs at the heartstrings a little bit. And it's easy to see why she would feel the way that she does. It would have been easy to kind of write her as like this angry asshole. I think they successfully steered away from that. Like, they kept her rage at like a believable, like justified level. It's like, look, she lost her brothers. Like, that would drive anybody crazy. But again, a very appropriate entry in the series. And it's another one as far as like a kind of solo-driven, no pun intended, but like kind of a solo character-driven book. I think it's a worthwhile entry to check out. Next up, we get this kind of like two-parters, because the new Jedi Order series is, whoa, dropped one, kind of popular for these type of things. Aaron Alston wrote these two books. The Enemy Lines Part 1 and 2, we get Rebel Dream and Rebel Stand, which details the Republic kind of striking back against the Yuuzhan Vong. Luke Skywalker and Mara Jade and the Wraith Squadron, who I haven't talked about yet. I will review those books soon, the Wraith Squadron books. They are written by Aaron Alston, so it's only appropriate that he would work the Wraith Squadron into these stories as well. They lead a mission onto Coruscant to investigate some strange force. His force senses are tingling Luke, so he feels the need to investigate what's going on Coruscant. And they eventually come across a Dark Jedi and this whole other thing, and and they have to stop the Dark Jedi. And in Part 2, like Han and Leia and C-3PO and R2-D2 get wrapped up into their own mission that feels disconnected from everything. That is mostly unimportant, and I feel like these two books kind of got away from themselves a little bit, tried to do a little bit too much. You probably just could have kept the story focused on what I thought was the most interesting part, which was Wedge Antilles dealing with a Yuuzhan Vong commander who is actually the father of War Master Savong Law. And I know I'm butchering a lot of these names, but that conflict was a lot more interesting to me because it felt very, again, chess match-like, and kind of, I don't want to compare it to, like, Horatio Hornblower or anything like that, but it did have that kind of like old school, like kind of military battle feel to it, almost like Wrath of Khan in a way. It's one of the reasons Wrath of Khan is my favorite Star Trek movie, because Kirk and Khan never have a face-to-face confrontation. It's all in the ships, and they're all just kind of like having chess matches with each other, and I thought that was great. I know a lot of people wish that Kirk and Khan had a face-to-face conversation. I was fine with it the way it was, and I kind of like that aspect to Wedge and Law's conflict here. Obviously, eventually Wedge is able to win, and the New Republic scores a major victory after getting their tails whipped in Star by Star. The mission on Coruscant really, investigating the whole Dark Jedi thing was very uninteresting to me. And I like the idea of Luke and Mara leading a mission onto Coruscant after it's been conquered by the Yuuzhan Vong, but the fact that what they ultimately searched had absolutely nothing to do with the Yuuzhan Vong was kind of disappointing to me, and seemed like a pointless detour. And again, like Han, Leia, and C-3PO and R2-D2 getting wrapped up in their own mission seemed like a pointless detour that didn't need to be there. I felt like you could have just done Wedge and this conflict that he's involved in. I think that would have made a fine book on its own. You didn't even need to split it into two. Not bad books by any means, but just kind of there's a lot of filler material in there that just doesn't need to be there. And actually, oddly enough, it's the major characters that are the filler, I feel like, with Luke and Mara Jade, kind of like, you could have dropped that. And Han and Leia, you could have dropped that. And just focused on Wedge. Which, again, I've said it before when I reviewed the first set of X-Wing books, like one of my favorite characters in the expanded universe was Wedge Antilles, and him and Boba Fett were just perfect for the expanded universe, because they were two characters that left an impression despite doing very little and not being important to the story itself. They just kind of were characters that were interesting. You wanted to see more of them. So the expanded universe kind of lent itself to getting more stories featuring those type of characters. So any time spent with Wedge Antilles, I think, is a good idea. And that's one of the reasons I like the X-Wing books. It's one of the reasons I kind of pop a little bit whenever Wedge shows up in one of these things. It's like, yeah, there's Wedge. Like, come on, he's the only Rebel pilot that participated in and survived all three major battles, so, as an X-Wing pilot. So I think it's like, okay, he flew a snowspeeder in the Battle of Hoth, but, as a Rogue Squadron pilot, he survived all three major battles from the original trilogy. So Wedge has, quietly had an amazing career that gets overlooked because he's not Luke Skywalker or Han Solo. But yeah, those two books I think are solid. They're okay, not necessarily must reads. And those are the ones I talk about with the new Jedi Order series, where you don't have to read every single entry. Those two could probably be skipped and you're not missing much. But if you do read them, if you're a completist and you got to read all 19 of the novels, they're not bad, and I don't think they're going to cause you too much pain. But we go into something a little bit more interesting with the book Traitor. We get to see what happens to to Jacen Solo in his time in captivity with the Yuuzhan Vong. This book is written by Matthew Stover, who, for those of you who've been following these videos, was the writer of the novelization of Revenge of the Sith, which I maintain is the best novelization of the Star Wars. But for the novelizations based off the movies, I think Revenge of the Sith is the best one. And basically fixes a lot of the problems that the movie has. But this book I thought was very interesting. As much as I liked having a book that centered on Jaina after the loss of her brothers, I really liked having a book that focused solely on Jacen during his time in captivity with the Yuuzhan Vong and what exactly happened there. And, you know, you have those stories, I can't think of any specific examples off the top of my head, but we've heard the stories before where somebody's put into captivity and, you know, it's the whole like Stockholm Syndrome thing where they ended up being reliant on each other and they get acclimated and immersed in the culture of their captives and ultimately become a part of that culture. And that starts to happen to Jacen Solo here. The deeper he goes as he's sold into slavery and he's paired up with his own specific Yuuzhan Vong, he gets trained in the ways of pain where, you know, pain is a very essential part of Yuuzhan Vong culture. And Jacen Solo gets tortured regularly as part of like his understanding of pain. He starts to get more and more used to the Yuuzhan Vong culture, and it looks like he's going to betray the Republic and ultimately join up with the Yuuzhan Vong. There even comes a point in the book where they take him to the now terraformed Yuuzhan Vong territory of Coruscant, and he begins to realize that the Republic is failing and the Force has failed him, and the Force isn't necessarily strictly the light and the dark side, but it's just raw power that he can channel. And as he becomes more and more used to the Yuuzhan Vong culture, it looks like he's going to go down that dark path and become one of them. It's like, oh no, we can't lose the Solo children to the Yuuzhan Vong, because the Yuuzhan Vong are actually obsessed with the Solo twins, because there's some weird religious belief they have where twins are something special and they can use them in part of their rituals or whatever. So they want to capture both Solo twins. So they've got one of them, and it looks like they're turning him to their side. And that's really what this book is largely about. It's about Jacen, I keep saying Anakin, Jacen Solo's time in captivity there in the Yuuzhan Vong. It's a very interesting character study. And again, it's one of the things I like about the New Jedi Order series is because it is such this massive conflict, and it is, you know, 19 books. You can do a lot of different things with that, and having a solely character-centric story I think really works well here. And again, it's just Jacen Solo and the people that he interacts with the person training him while he's in Yuuzhan Vong captivity, the slave masters, the people he comes in contact with, the Jedi Knight who ultimately comes to try and save him, one of the few Jedi Knights that believes he's still alive. And all those character interactions are very interesting. So the person who trains him, like the name pronunciation, I'm probably going to butcher. It's like Vergiger. I should really get like a pronunciation code for the Star Wars expanded universe, because a lot of these names are just bizarre. It's like reading anagrams. But I think Traitor is a really good book as well. So I will say this: if you were a fan of the Solo children, the New Jedi Order series has got you covered, because I think Star by Star is one of their best stories that features them. I think Dark Journey is a very good book for Jaina, and I think Traitor is a very good book for Jacen. And earlier we had Anakin Solo in some of the earlier entries leading his own missions and coming into his own as a character. So much better than what it was in the 90s when they were kids and they were just getting captured all the time, or just getting written out of the story, or getting babysat by Chewbacca or C-3PO and going to the zoo and causing hijinks. Like, I think they've grown into much better characters in this older part of the time, or, you know, further into the future we go, they become much more interesting and much more dynamic characters, to the point that, you know, like I said with Rebel Dream and Rebel Stand, like Luke and Han and Leia kind of feel like they're in the way a little bit and kind of in the filler material. I kind of want to see what the Solo children are up to at this point, and maybe that's a thing. Maybe at some point I'll cover the Young Jedi Knights series, if I ever get around to that. Unfortunately, they have not been re-released, and I haven't read those books in years, so I don't know. They were very popular among my my grade and my class of kids my age, but I haven't read them in years, and unfortunately my copies of them no longer exist, and they are out of print. Disney, as far as I know, has not re-released them, so I would like to reread them. I don't know if they hold up, but I would definitely like to revisit those stories, because those were the ones that really kind of put the Solo children on the map as major characters in the Star Wars canon. And here we're kind of seeing the fruits of that labor, where now it's like they feel like, instead of like the snot-nosed kids that get in trouble all the time, they feel like major characters with their own wants, desires, and their own struggles and problems that they deal with. And, this war with the Yuuzhan Vong is so different from anything that was dealt with the Galactic Empire, that it allows for those newer characters to kind of shine and not feel like they're just retreading what we saw in the classic trilogy. Something that that Force Awakens was certainly criticized for. But I digress. So, that concludes my reviews of these 5 entries in the New Jedi Order series. Sometime in 2019, I will finish with the last 6 books in the series as we conclude this major epic in Star Wars canon. Thank you all for watching. Thank you all for watching my Star Wars book reviews throughout all of 2018. I will have more for you in 2019, but until then, may the Force be with you, and Happy New Year.